Pod. Pod. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the 22 Gram Pod podcast. In this episode, we're talking to Dan Wilson, who was lead singer of Blackwire. Blackwire were a band that were firmly in the thick of it back in the day, forming in 2003 in Leeds. And I think that everyone who went to club nights around that time will remember dancing to the song Hard to Love, Easy to Lay, among some of their other songs. I was also interested in talking to Dan about his career after Blackwire and his involvement in album artwork, amongst other projects. I was able to catch up with Dan during lockdown, just after the clap for the NHS.
How are you doing? You alright?
Yeah, not bad, mate, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I just did the clap as well. It was quite loud tonight, wasn't
it? It was dead on our street.
Oh, really? Fair enough.
Honestly, the last couple of weeks, it's been every single person on the street out and people banging pots and pans and the whole works. But tonight it was a little bit more subdued.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't know.
Are you in Leeds?
I'm not. I live in a place called Leigh-on-Sea, quite near Southend. So it's
right, okay.
Yeah, the next seaside town along, man. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
How did you end up there then?
So I moved to London in 2007, and then a few years ago was completely and utterly done with London. The reason we ended up here, so my wife is from she's from Essex.
Okay.
And we weirdly her brother bought a place out here in Leigh. And I visited for the day, and we just kind of fell in love with the place. I think it was it was everything we were missing from London. You know, it was quiet, there's nature, there's space. You know, so
it sounds pretty good being on the sea as well.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. I don't think anyone needs to know about the quiet life by the seaside.
If we get stuck into it, Blackwire, how did it all come about?
So Blackwire basically started when I moved to Leeds for university. So Sai, who was the guitarist in Blackwire, me and him have been friends since we were I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 or something.
Okay.
So both grew up in Middlesbrough, went to the same school and everything. And me and him were just we were best mates, always loved music. It was just, that was what we were into. And then moved to Leeds. And then I think we got to Leeds I think it was 2002. So it's we got to Leeds just as things were getting exciting and everything felt possible. So, and coming to Leeds, which was I know it is a relatively small city, but it felt massive. Coming from a small town, it just felt huge. And not only the scale of being in a city, but just it felt anything was possible. The opportunities just opened. So it was it was the perfect time for me and him to move, to be So we moved to a city that was on the ascendancy and just being a bit more of an exciting city in itself, but also culturally, everything that was going on, it was just the perfect storm, really. So because anything felt possible, we were let's start a band, let's make music, let's do what we've always wanted to do, but never, felt. Well, I mean, Sai had done stuff before we moved because he was he did music at college and stuff like that, and he played a couple of gigs and things like that. But I'd never done anything. I tried to start a band with Sai when we were kids, and I got too nervous when it came to playing the gigs, and it was literally gigs in pubs, pubs by the seaside in this place called Red Car, which is just a seaside town. And then I was just, it got too much, the idea of playing, in the Dog and Parrot to 8 people scared the life out of me. But,
so you already had songs before you moved to Leeds then, or was it? Okay.
Some would argue we didn't have songs when we were in Leeds. No. So I mean, how it started. So it was like, like I say, man, like everything felt possible. It was like so we were just excited. It's basically, when you start a new relationship with someone, and you just feel like you're invincible and you can live forever, and you're just on cloud nine constantly. That's what it was like, kind of. And I'm almost at like pains to say it, moving to Leeds, because everyone's kind of got to have a dig at Leeds because everyone hates the football team and everything like that. So
I can relate to that, because obviously we're coming from Hull.
Yeah,
I remember going to watch bands in Leeds on nights out, and it did seem a lot bigger, like a lot more going on.
Yeah.
I know what you mean, definitely.
It did. It just felt like it's so weird now to think that it was just like someone had turned the lights on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously, it's not just the geography of it. Obviously, as well, it's like culturally what was happening. Like everything was just. It was like this just an awakening, and it was amazing, and it was class.
Yeah.
And so we started. We had this kind of this passion for music, and just started writing songs, and it all started. I bought like this like a drum machine recording studio thing, like a little kind of tiny unit that probably cost him about £100 or something. It was like, and that was it. And then we just started recording demos on that.
Okay.
And it's like me, I've never done anything musically before. Like my background was like through studying art and going to art college and things. And I was like obsessed with kind of like just creating music that kind of encompassed more than just, boys with guitars.
Yeah.
And I know that's kind of like an underpinning theme of this podcast and stuff, but that was never my, that was never my
that wasn't your aim, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like you say with the drum machine, that seemed to kind of like give you a bit of a unique sound to other bands. Would you say that's fair assumption?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so like, we starting inside bedroom, just writing songs with that drum machine.
Yeah.
It was amazing because basically all we were doing was kind of taking the kind of sounds we were hearing when we were out, like going to clubs and stuff, and then trying to kind of recreate and do our own versions. Like, because before Tom joined, who was the bass player, and it was just me and Si, we were like just doing daft covers in his bedroom, like for our friends who'd like, our friend Danny really wanted a cover of a Jilted John tune, like some old like punk tune, and so we did like a kind of electro version of that, and that we were just doing that kind of stuff really. And I remember us really I don't know why, but I remember us really trying to do a cover version of Kids in America.
It's a tune, to be fair.
Yeah, but I have no idea what made us want to cover that. I don't know. But so it was, we were just making these kind of like electro tunes, and I was kind of like, at the time I was really into bands like The Faint and Le Tigre, stuff like that. Who else? Like Liars, things like that. ARE Weapons, Beaches, like all that kind of stuff. So that was like the kind of starting point for me, really. All that. So it's kind of like both ends of the spectrum. So you had obviously the guitar bands like Strokes and things like that. It kind of galvanized everybody and made people want to be in a band. But then you had this other end of the spectrum that was like a little bit more, it felt a bit more debauched and a bit more interesting and a bit more dangerous to some extent.
Okay, right, yeah.
So it was like, that's what we were trying to get at initially. And like you said, the fact that we did have a drum machine did set us apart. And the great thing about that is it meant we could go and play club nights. And you probably remember there was so many club nights everywhere back then. Yeah. So it was like we could, turn up, and just because we've got, a lot, if you turn up and you've got the right PA and like a couple of bands have been on playing their little like rinky dink Thames beat little Coy Libertines tunes all night, and then we turn up and we can like bang out this massive kick drum sound, like 4 to the floor, and everyone's just like, all right, well now, you know, it's time to you know, elevate the evening however you choose to elevate it, you know. I mean, when I was a kid as well, like I used to love hip hop, so I was like, I love the sound of drum machines, and I love like sampling culture and things like that. So it was like all of that we could do, like, you know, like you know, if we heard a drum sound that we liked, I mean, I'm saying it as if I had the technical know-how how to do this. I didn't, but I could say, that drum sound's mint, and then he could like work his magic, and the next thing you know, we had it, you know. So yeah.
So obviously, like you say, you're a bit too shy to play gigs in Middlesbrough, but I'm reading here that within a month of forming, you were playing club nights in Leeds. So how did that happen?
Yeah, so like I say, I mean, when we moved to Leeds, and it was just like,
it's like a confidence boost you got from just being in Leeds, basically.
I don't want to give Leeds all the credit. It was I think it was just like shaking off that baggage of like coming from your hometown and things like that. And you know, I'd say, because obviously I knew we were going to have this chat, so I've been thinking about the start, well, thinking about, you know, being in Blackwire. It's not something you think about on a daily basis. So it's, you know, I was thinking about it, and I think like the start of it was when I went to art college, like my first day at art college. I think that was kind of where this kind of was the beginning of it, really. Because before you went to uni to do art, back then, I don't know if it's the same now, but you had to do like a foundation course.
Yeah,
and on this foundation course, right, you do everything, and it's like they want you to be like experimental and try everything. So it's kind of like doing that just opened my mind up to loads of different things, and just having the confidence of that, and like actually working hard, enjoying it, and like taking something from education that you can kind of to be creative with it. That just you know, inspired me. And then and you know, like there was so much DIY culture going on back then as well. Like it's you know, bands like records like Fisher Spooner, like Emerge and things like that. That's you know, could have been made, you know, on GarageBand essentially, if it was around, and that was like a massive hit. So it was like all these possibilities were there, and it was like, you know, like any kid who's like 19, 20, I was kind of enamored with like punk culture and things like that. It, like, to me, going to Leeds, like this was my like downtown New York in the 70s, or my like factory records era Manchester. Like it was everything. Again, I'm giving Leeds the credit again now. I'm just gonna have to admit it, Anna. Thank you, Leeds.
So you started playing gigs in Leeds, and like how quickly were you getting like, you know, good feedback or a bit of notoriety? Was it quite instant, or
how do you
remember
it? We had notoriety before we were a band, before we picked up an instrument. It was like that, and I just thought that was hilarious. And
how did that come about then? Demos and stuff, or?
Well, I mean, look, so Tom, who was the bass player, before I'd met him, before I moved to Leeds, my girlfriend at the time, she'd been to university in Leeds, and she said, when you go there, I want you to stay away from this guy called Tom. And I was like, oh, why is that? And she was just like, it's just bad news. And it's like, she told me all these stories about him, like looking like Kurt Cobain, but dressing like Courtney Love, and turning up at parties in dresses and doing weird. Not that there's anything wrong with, you know, wearing a dress. But
sounds like someone you want to meet, to be fair.
For some reason, she was just like, stay away from this guy. Like, he's like not a good. Maybe she thought he'd be a bad influence on me. I don't know.
Right.
But
probably the worst thing she could say then, really.
Yeah. So I was like, I've got to meet this guy. And then when I arrived at Leeds, I found this flyer for a club night called Pigs. And at Pigs, it was like, I think it was quite a minimal design, and it just said like electro, like synth sounds, guitar sounds, like new wave, no wave, like, and I was like, this is ticking all my boxes here. Got to the club, and it was, instantly, it was about, I think I got there like as soon as the doors opened, there was maybe 10, 20 people there. Right. And in my head, I'm sure the first song that I remember dancing to was 80s Matchbox Beeline Disaster. I'm pretty sure it was that. And then there was one other person dancing. So I was like, well, this guy is now my friend forever. And I said, well, I asked him what his name was. And lo and behold, it was this infamous Tom guy I'd been warned to keep away from. So like, here we go. And then, so basically.
Was he from Leeds?
No, he's from like a place called Summercourts, which is near Derby.
Okay, right.
Yeah, but he was there at uni.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of notoriety, like, well, he definitely had it from me. And then, and then I think because we definitely got a reputation very quickly, because people kind of thought that, one, we weren't a real band because we didn't have a drummer, which again I thought was just hilarious and brilliant. Like I've said to you, like how I viewed the world through like fresh eyes and saw all this new possibility. For then somebody to tell me that we weren't a real in quotes band, like because we didn't have a drummer, I just found baffling. Like, I just found it so funny. I was just like, oh my god, like, it's like, who is this guy to tell us that like we're not allowed to do this because we don't have another guy hitting drums behind us? Like, it's so funny.
People were quite ready to tell you that, were they?
Oh, big time, yeah. So people didn't like that, and then people kind of, because we played gigs outside of Leeds. I don't mean everybody. There was people who were supportive, but like people kind of just didn't like this idea of us. Like, I think they had an idea that you were supposed to play in Leeds for 10 years and then you could go out to the world and blah, blah, blah. But that wasn't my or our agenda whatsoever. Like, our second gig was in London.
Okay, right.
I want to go out and travel, and going back to like art college as well. Like, prior to kind of moving to Leeds and being in the band, like I'd been to London, I think twice in my life. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm doing something I've always wanted to do and never thought I could do. And I got offered a gig in London. Like, of course I'm going to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and like I said, because we had the drum machine, so we had a kind of the dancier electronic elements to begin with. Like, it did open more doors for us.
Yeah, because I suppose you're like a club mate's dream, really, if they're going to headline with you.
Yeah,
and everyone's going to go wild. Yeah.
And those first couple of gigs, like, we only had like a 10, 15-minute set.
Yeah, that's
so,
mad.
And we were naive as anything. Like, we didn't want money. We'd have paid the promoters. Do you know what I mean? Like, we'd have quite happily. Not that we had any money, but if we did, we'd have given them it. Like, yeah. I remember, like, we'd turn up for gigs in London, and like promoters would to just be like, "Oh, what do you want?" And we were like, well, "What do you mean? Like, I'll have a bottle of White Lightning, and that'll do." Like, it's about £3. Is that all right? Honestly, we were just like so naive, excited, and just ready to like have fun. Basically, that was how it all started. Yeah.
And it says here, like, played with a lot of like big bands at the time, Block Party, Libertines, The Cribs. How did stuff like that come about?
Yeah, so again, because we had that notoriety and things like that, we kind of, like I said, because of the songs we were writing, were kind of really influenced by the songs we were hearing when we were going out and things like that. We lent ourselves quite well to supporting like established bands. The records that we were dancing to. Do you know what I mean? So bands like The Rapture, Ladytron, things like that, Block Party. There was like elements of that within us. So it was like it was a good fit, you know. And,
Wait, so you supported the Rapture?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, because when I was listening to it the other day, I was like, that's definitely, you're almost like the UK's kind of Rapture, really, the way you sound.
That's just made my day, because all I've ever wanted to do is be in like some indie disco punk funk party band, and I've never. Yeah. I mean, I'm not dead yet, but I think I don't know. Maybe I'll achieve it one day. But no, like playing with the Rapture for me was absolutely massive. Like I watched them sound check, and when Luke Jenner was singing Olio,
his voice is nagging it.
He sounded like Robert Smith. And it was beautiful. And it was just like, I don't know what drum machine they had or what synths or whatever, but they've just got this like that little synth riff just looping, and he was just singing over it. And it was just like the band, me just geeking out watching them sound check in the big room at the cockpit. And I was just like, that's a moment. That's a moment I still think about. Like, that was incredible. So yeah, it was great, and like I said, because the scene was so kind of eclectic and the scope of it was wide open, you could then, like you say, like you mentioned, the Cribs and the Libertines and things like that, you could then go and play with those type of bands as well.
Yeah. I mean, you must have some good memories of playing with them.
It's weird because, I mean, a band like the Libertines, look, like I loved that first album. I thought it was great. Like, we played a couple of gigs with them. One we played, right. So we played with them in Middlesbrough at a place called the Arena. That the night we played with them was when we just got our first single back, like the test pressings of our first single back.
Right.
So it was like, that was just, I mean, that day, that was incredible. I mean, you've got your first ever record, you're off to go and support a band you absolutely love, which I did at the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it was incredible. Like, met, like, Alan McGee was managing him at the time. So, and he'd obviously managed Oasis. So it's like, you're just in your in your hometown, just feeling
that's pretty good,
like feeling on top of the world. The gig went well. We were supposed to sell the records, and I remember us just walking around, just giving them to people. We were like, just so we were still buzzing from the gig. I remember Tom jumped off the stage and like smashed his face open. So he was like covered in blood, looking like Johnny Thunders walking around, like dishing out records. It was brilliant. And like my dad was there. Maybe my mum was there. Like, I don't know. It was just, it was great. And like, just an incredible night. And then the other time we played with the Libertines it was a funny one, because we were on our way down to London to play the Barfly in Camden. And the Queen's of Noise were putting us on. And on the way down, Mairead or Tabitha like rang us up and were like, "Oh, do you mind if we put another band on with you tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah, sounds like." And they were like, "Oh, don't worry, they'll go on before you." And we're like, "Yeah, well, we're not bothered." You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Like, I completely trusted them as promoters, as people. Like, totally loved them. I was like, "Yeah, whatever you guys want to do." And I was like, "Oh, who is it?" And they were like, "Oh, it's Libertines. Pete's just got out of prison." So I was like,
"Oh, wow.
Ah, right, okay." So, and I remember like, I was like, "Look, they can go on after us. It's fine." But because I remember like driving down, I think we had like a copy of the NME in the van, and we were reading all about like how Pete Doherty was clean and how he was like maybe going to get out of prison, and it was like, he's out. And I can say, I mean, I'm hardly going to be dropping a bombshell here, but he definitely wasn't clean.
Fair play.
In any sense of the word.
I've got to ask you about Hard to Love, Easy to Let, because obviously it became like a staple of every indie night going, didn't it? So like, it didn't matter to me.
That's. I mean, I was just enjoying you saying that. That's a nice thing to hear. Yeah, it's like, But
it must be a good fit. I mean, did you know when you guys wrote that? Did you think, this is a banger kind of thing, or how did it come about?
the thing is, when you're writing songs, you think every song is a banger.
Yeah,
you know
that's
I mean?
true.
Like,
you're in love with it for that time.
You're absolutely in love with it, and you just think, yeah, this is the best thing since the last one. You know?
Yeah.
But that song, like, so our first single was Attack, Attack, Attack.
Yeah.
Did really well, and we got like single of the week in the NME and things like that, which, like, you know, just blew our minds. And then so we were like super confident. We'd been playing gigs. I said, the thing is, like, we hadn't been together that long, but we did play a lot of gigs.
Yeah.
And it's like, when we weren't playing, we were writing songs, we were rehearsing. Like, do you know what I mean? It was like, I definitely don't want to say a full-time job. It was just life. Like, everything we did was like focused on the band. That was it. So it was like, we went to, I don't really remember how, I don't know if it started with the bass line or what, I'm not sure. Like, but the two main memories of how it started were on the chorus bit, where it kind of like slows down and it's just got like that big sort of guitar sound. Like, I remember Cy playing that, and I was just like, I mean, this isn't going to do me any favors and make me sound cool, but I remember thinking it had a Kings of Leon vibe.
Okay, right.
I was like, I quite like this kind of weird Kings of Leon vibe for this bit.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have said that to Cy at the time, because I'm sure he'd have punched me for having such pedestrian taste. But I remember thinking that, and I remember thinking, oh, this is cool, and it gives me a chance to do something a little bit different. And I like this idea of having like because then when we worked on the verses, and it's just like, it's almost like a techno beat or something. So you've got this weird like pounding techno beat, and then this absolutely incredible bass line that is just, you know, it takes no prisoners. I love that bass line. And then it just like, it's just building, and then it breaks down into this weird little slowed down chorus. And I just, you know, I mean, when we made that song, like, I just remember thinking, this is just bizarre. I did think it was a bizarre tune. And then when we started playing it live and everything, it just took on a life of its own. And it was just, it felt cool. Like, it felt, because obviously we put out the first single, Attack, 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 which is almost like a kind of a mission statement. You know, if you're going to call a song that, you know what I mean? Like, you've got to come out blaze it. And then because that kind of surpassed any ideas of what I thought it would, you know, we pressed 500 initially, and I thought, well, that's cool. We've got 500 records that no one's going to buy. You know, that was and then we kind of, apart from ones we give away at that Libertines gig, sold out. We did a repressing that sold out, you know. So it was like, when we went into the studio, we knew we had to like follow something up, and like we had to follow it up with something big. But it was just that song just like clicked. It was just, and I mean, if you ask, it's weird, because when you're speaking on behalf of a band, and like the other guys can't contribute, I'm aware of that. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm sure Cy could be like, oh, well, I had this idea for this arrangement or this guitar sound or whatever. But for me, I don't know. I turned up, Cy had this like cool sound, and I don't know. I presume Cy wrote the bass line, but I mean, that it's just because obviously I was listening to the tunes today before speaking to you, just to refresh my memory, and I mean, that bass line is still incredible.
No, it's a banger, definitely. Yeah. It takes you straight back to those
nights. I mean, my only wish for that song is that that the bass sound had become like a chant at football games. You know what I mean? In the same way, like Seven Nation Army or something like that. If that,
you just need to get Del Piero to chant it.
That's it.
And it takes off.
Yeah.
I was saying to Tom in the last one, like, you caught the wave when quite a few bands are still getting signed. But did you feel like a transition between getting signed and then kind of having to keep hold of the record label kind of thing?
No. So what happened is, so basically our record label was called 48 Crash, and they were born and existed just to put out our records.
Oh, right, okay.
So I know, like, it's so funny that like there was so much, like I said to you about like the naivety and the innocence that we all had. Like, I genuinely didn't know about the obscene amounts of money and things like that until I read Meet Me in the Bathroom last year.
Oh,
Do you
okay,
know what I
right.
mean? Like, I knew people were getting signed and things like that, but that was never our world. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we you know, as our friends got signed to majors and things like that, and they got like development deals, and they had to like go in a studio. They weren't allowed to tour. They weren't allowed to release anything, and it
Right.
just seemed like the complete antithesis of what we wanted to do, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, I'm not saying that like if a major label had come along and said, here's a load of money, lads, you know, we'd have bit their hands off, because it would have meant we could have bought some food and bought a new pair of shoes, you know.
Yeah.
But like basically, so we how our record label came about, we entered a competition, like a battle of the bands, to play Leeds Festival.
Oh,
Because we
okay.
were all, I mean, we all loved Leeds Festival. It was
Yeah,
like
definitely.
a
Yeah.
proper dream to play there. So we went along and we played, and we came last,
Oh, okay.
which was standard practice for the time.
Right.
But like we had a great night, and one of the guys who was at the gig came up to us and he was like, "I love that. I'm a producer. Come along to my studio." And he was the guy who like produced. He produced Hard to Love. He produced the album. So it's like we lost that battle, but we won our own personal little war. I think after playing some gigs and then seeing the reality of music as a business, like I don't even know if we would have ever managed to play a gig if we'd signed to a major. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, because I've got friends who, yeah, like I say, like they've recorded with like, you know, producers like Stephen Street and things like that, and their album never came out. It just got shelved. So initially, of course, like when you're a kid and you've got an ego and things like that, it's like when you're seeing people getting signed and you've got every single person in the band thinks their band is better than everybody else's band, right?
Yeah.
So when you're seeing like, you know, some like, I don't know, some nameless, faceless, trophy wearing band like gets like a lot of money, and you're going to have that like pang of jealousy, but like then they didn't do anything, you know, because they couldn't. There was like, it's like they had their hands chopped off. They took this money, but then they couldn't do anything. Whereas we had a label that had a studio, so we could record whenever we wanted, as long as it was available. And then our manager owned a van, so we can tour when we want, we can record when we want.
Yeah.
And then if a label comes along, then happy days, you know. But like that was it like I say, when in my own kind of mythology, it was like a kind of factory records vibe.
Yeah.
The producer we were working with, and to an extent our manager, they were like kind of quite old school, and like I mean, our producer, like, he's still a good friend of ours. We totally love him, and like he just like he had like he saw and knows like just the spirit of kind of all the bands that he'd been in and he'd been interested in, and you know, he kind of he stoked that fire within us. So it was like we didn't care, to be honest, about any of that stuff. Like as far as we were concerned, we were like living the dream, like absolutely living the dream. Like we could make music, like we were all best mates, like so we could live together, record together, go and play gigs, go to a different part of the country, then a different part of the world, like every day, every week, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like it didn't matter, you know. And it's like when you're 20, and you know, all you've got to do is pay your rent and find a few bits of food every now and again.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, you know. It's so it was like it was absolutely it worked well for us. That's a
I was going to say, because it says here, did a tour of America as well.
Yeah,
I mean, that must have been. I mean, that's just must have been the best thing ever as a 20-year-old.
It was amazing. But so how that came, that was kind of all thanks to Hard to Love Easy to Air.
Right, okay.
Because we had a separate manager out in America, and he was shopping in Amoeba Records in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, I've been there,
Yeah, he liked the artwork. He'd never heard of the band, didn't know anything. He just saw it in the new releases section, liked the artwork. So took it home, listened to it, went back and bought the other 5 copies that I had so nobody else could have it. And he sent us an email, and he was like, hey guys, like, introduced himself, like, you know, and he was like, I want to like meet you guys. And we were like, And we're like, all right, yeah, come to Leeds, mate. And then I swear to God, I think it was 2 days later, he was in Leeds.
No way.
And it was just like, I was like, all right, okay. Like, you know, we thought it was just some guy. Like, you know, anyone can send an email, you know. But he literally put his money where his mouth is. He was in Leeds. He was like, what's the biggest obstacle with you guys getting in the studio and things like that?
Right.
And I think it was paying our rent, which was about 40 quid a week, something ridiculous like that. So he like, give us some money to pay our rent for a bit.
Yeah.
And was like, just get in the studio, get this recorded. And we did. And then I remember he came over from America when we finished the album. He came to the studio and listened to it. And like everybody in that room was just like fully on board with everything we'd done. It was just, it was magic. There was a lot of love going on. And and then he got us out to America. I think it was like, January going into February.
Okay.
It was absolutely amazing. Like going, so we started on the West Coast, like playing San Francisco and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then we played like his hometown, which was a place called Oswego in Illinois, like just quite near Chicago. And we wanted to do like, because that kind of, I'd heard a lot of like about underage shows in America, like from like, you know, like the hardcore scene.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
So we wanted to do an all ages show, and the only venue we could do it at was like the local high school.
Right.
And it was, oh man, it was unbelievable. But because of the song "Hard to Love, Easy to Learn," there'd been a bit of like controversy from a couple of the like parents or I don't know, the local religious groups or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there was police at the gig. Like it was amazing. It was like, do you remember the Smash Hits Poll Winners Party? Do you remember that?
I know what you mean.
Yeah, that's what it's like walking on stage. Walking on stage, and it was just like everybody was like screaming, and it's like it felt like we were in like Take That or something.
Yeah.
And the police at the side of the stage, it just reminded me of like old footage of like Jim Morrison, you know, like when he got his knob out and just getting like, and I just thought, this is absolutely brilliant. This is the exact reason you want to be in a band, to be playing this utterly insane venue and having this ridiculous idea where if I say the words "hard to love, easy to learn," I'm going to get arrested. Do you know what I mean? Like for something so daft that you could, you know, if that was happening in England, the police would get laughed out of the venue. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, but why is that why they were there then for that song?
Yeah.
That's mad.
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't play it.
No, we did play it, and we got our manager's 6-year-old son to sing it because they only stipulated that I couldn't sing it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's it. Is there any footage of it anyway?
No, but the only like the one surviving thing, there was it made the front page of the local newspaper.
Yeah.
And it had like this amazing picture of us, and it just said Rock and Roll High School. And I just thought, that is cool, man.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then that tour actually ended in New York. And that was just, I mean, you know, if you putting it into context of like early 2000s New York, which is the epicenter of everything, you know, it's the home of like, well, you know, like the whole Brooklyn scene with like Liars, Yeahs, Interpol, everything, you know. Yeah. And like we went out and played a couple of shows out there. We played a club called Misshapes, which at the time was like it was the coolest place on planet Earth. Like it had to be, like without question. And we played there, and we did the Mercury Lounge as well. And, it was incredible. The only thing is, we didn't actually stay in New York. We were staying in Hoboken, which is like New Jersey. So it's like you'd have these amazing nights out and like these amazing gigs, and it'd be like, right, see you later. I've got to get a cab back to Jersey now. It's just like. But it was amazing. We and just being in New York and just going out there, and like obviously we wanted to go and drink at the bar where like the Strokes drank and things like that. And we went in there, and the first person we met was like Anton from Brian Jonestown Massacre.
No way.
Yeah, and I was like obsessed with those guys and the documentary about them. Dick.
That Dick, it's amazing, wasn't it?
And just like hanging out with him, and like it was amazing. He invited us to his house for tea the next night, but I was too, well, I think we were all a bit too scared because he was a lovely guy. But I think if I had to, like, I don't know, it was a bit intense.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially from that big documentary, you seem like
big
capable
time
of anything, didn't he?
But he was lovely that night. And
yeah.
One of my best mates was like, he was like their biggest fan, so I got him to like sign a lot of stuff for him, and then I mean, another New York highlight was we went to this club called the Dark Room, and I kind of heard of it because I knew like Interpol went there and stuff like that.
Right.
And walked in like, you know, just expecting like an average kind of indie night or whatever. And it's Paul Banks from Interpol was DJing, playing 90s hip hop, and I was like, this is my dream, and it was incredible. But Sai got really, really drunk, and he did something, I can't remember what he did, because I think like the Dark Room was quite a notorious like club. It had like
I think I remember reading about it in that Meet Me in the Bathroom book. I think
and that kind of made me laugh because Sai got kicked out of there. So I don't know what the hell he did, but Sai got kicked out, so nearly had to leave.
Obviously, it seemed like you kind of split up quite early. What was the story there?
Well, we've been together like maybe 4.5. I can't remember if we were actually together for 5 years or not.
Right.
I'm not sure, but like, you know, in that time, we'd done we'd done a lot, you know, we'd released an album, we toured a lot. Like, so for example, that American tour, when we got back, we had to do like a British and European tour, and we did like 28 gigs in 30 days.
Right.
So it's like, and if you think about it, it's not like, you know, it's not like we're U2 or the Rolling Stones on like big buses, eating healthy and looking after ourselves. Like, you're going out and you're being like a 20-something. Do you know what I mean? Like, So it's like, imagine having like 15 or 16 years worth of nights out in 2 years. do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So
you don't know how you're going to handle it, do you?
It was intense.
Yeah.
It was intense. And like, we lived together. Well, I lived with them for a year, and then I had to move out because it was too much for me. I'm a delicate little flower, and those guys were not delicate.
Right, okay.
So yeah, it was just there was a lot of like partying going on and stuff. So I moved. I didn't want to go too far, so I moved next door but one. You know, so it wasn't like I was miles away, so I could dip my toe back into it. But, so I think as well, like, so yeah, I mean, it's like there's that great quote from the Strokes, isn't it? The best way to ruin a friendship is to be in a band. The best way to ruin a band is to go on tour. So it's like,
right, okay,
yeah. But I mean, there was no big like animosity, you know, no fisticuffs or anything. It's just as well, we moved to London.
Right.
So it's like, and we were getting into different things, and it was just, a lot of change, you know, like a lot was going on, and culturally, I think a lot of changed as well, because that whole thing about kind of major label bands and stuff, like if you take the trajectory of that 5-year period, we've got stuff like albums that I was excited about, like The Faint, 80s Matchbox, stuff like that, things, you know, that I thought were genuinely exciting. And then cut to 5 years later, and you've got like these indie bands soundtracking In-Betweeners and stuff like that. And it just wasn't like, it wasn't, for me, I can't speak for the other guys, but for me personally, that like wasn't something I wanted to be a part of. Like, it lost any kind of artistry, any kind of danger, any kind of edge. It was just like, come on, man. Like, it was just stale. And then I think moving to London, then we broke up, and like Sai did a band, I did a band, and I think we kind of, in doing our like little separate bands, we got to indulge in ideas we wouldn't necessarily, I guess, get to put to the forefront in Blackwire. But I mean, the best thing about breaking up was the fact that we could do a little reunion a few years later.
Yeah, I was reading about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that was all thanks to the Cribs. So we toured a lot with the Cribs, like a hell of a lot. And you know, I absolutely love and adore those guys. As a band and as people. And I mean, they did a lot for us. Like, and I mean, like I say, like the idea of it being so wide open in the beginning, like we'd go on tour with them, and it'd be like, so they're, you know, the Cribs are the Cribs, and then they'd take us on tour with them. It was like this weird kind of, you know, band with a drum machine who kind of, you know, not necessarily who you'd put with the Cribs. And then they'd have Jeffrey Lewis on as well. And it was just that, like, that's what I mean. You could put together these wild nights that were just so broad and exciting. And it'd be like the audience would like take bits from each different act. And it was incredible. Do you know what I mean? And,
I'm pretty sure I saw you in Hull with the Cribs. It might have been you with the Cribs and Maximo Park, if I remember rightly. Maybe it wasn't.
No, and I'll tell you why I know it wasn't, because I knew Maximo Park had come up. I'm like, I used to be obsessed with him. I used to love Maximo Park so much. I'm the one guy who absolutely loved them. to the point where
were they from Borough as well? From Sunderland, though.
Paul Smith, the singer's from like Billingham, which is Teesside. But like he went to the same art college as me, and like I just, because of that and because of his like, you know, he was quite pretentious in his lyrics, but I love that. I love that bravery and that vulnerability for a lad from Borough. Yeah. To put that out there, to really put his heart in his sleeve and be like unapologetically like well read and into art. Like I loved it. I'm getting excited thinking about it now. I don't even listen to him. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah. No, I definitely remember playing with them. But I think we did play a Hull with the Cribs.
Yeah, I'm sure I saw you at some point, with the Cribs.
Yeah. But I mean, so when we did the reunion, like we did one of their Cribsmas nights.
The
O2 in Leeds. And they'd asked us to do it like a few times, but it never felt right. And then I think one year, like I think Gary or Ryan text one of us, and we just happened to all be in the pub together the day they text. So we were all in the pub, we're having a beer, and it was like, do you know what? Let's do it, you know? Yeah. And luckily at the time, Tom, the bass player, he was actually in a band with Danny, the drummer as well, from Blackwire. So it was like they already had like rehearsal space. So it was like it was one of those like cosmic, the stars aligned moments. So and it was nice because like you say, like to reading about it, you think it sounds like we broke up abruptly. So it was nice to kind of, because when we played our last gig, initially, like there was only Cy who knew it was our last. I don't even know if Cy knew he was going to leave the band.
Is that what triggered it?
I'm not sure. So it was like nobody. I don't think anybody really knew it would be our last gig. So then to get to be able to get together and go and play some gigs and just draw a line under it. It was super. It was like super nice. It was like the best thing. And to like take our like have our girlfriends or wives or whatever like involved in the process. Rather than, you know, it was like it became this whole new thing. It was amazing. I'm like,
to do it back in Leeds must have been good as well.
It was, yeah. To go back to that Shangri-La that I've been going on about so much.
Yeah, like with that in mind about Leeds and stuff.
Yeah.
Like looking back now, do you think it was a unique time for being in a band, kind of thing? Do you think? Oh well, especially in the UK.
I definitely think it was a unique time because, like I said, there was so much going on. There was like, so without going like too deep about it, like after 9/11, like everything changed, like everything.
Yeah.
Like whole culture changed. Like the entirety of the 20th century, right? Everybody had been taught that America is like indestructible and its culture is the world's culture and things like that. And like it was just this powerhouse, and it just like it loomed over everything. And then when it was exposed as being vulnerable and those like terrible things happened, and then it just sparked off this kind of the effects in New York where it was like, we've got to make something happen, we've got to do something, we've got to just throw caution to the wind, and then the ripple effects that had across the world were like phenomenal. Like that can't be like underestimated. So it's then like for you to start a band, then it's like you had nothing to lose.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. It's like you kind of fed off the energy that was radiating from that place. And I'm not saying that means you go out and sing with an American accent. You know what I mean? I'm saying you take that energy and that spirit, and then you kind of you put yourself into that.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it was such a unique time. And the fact that, so if you look at it like through the lens of like indie, right? When I started going out, so I was 16 in 1998, right? So if you start going out when you're 16, and like you've missed Britpop and everything like that, and you've missed like the whole rave scene, acid house scene, because I had young parents, right? So I got to see, I was like quite involved in like seeing what nightlife and nightclub culture was like. So I could see it, like, they'd talk about going to like my dad would go to like Northern Soul weekenders, but they'd also be playing like acid house and things like that. So like, he'd like play all these like amazing records at home, and I'd be like, oh my God, going out sounds like the best thing, right? Cut to 1998, I go out, I'm in flares dancing to Stone Roses. You know what I mean? I'm just like, this isn't what I was promised. So then, and I've got nothing against the Stone Roses, but at 16 years old, I don't want to be dancing to songs that are 15. I know what you mean, yeah. Like 15
I
years old.
I had that moment with like going out at 16 and dancing to like Proclaimers and Queen and thinking, this isn't quite what I'm after.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, like me and my mates, we were all like banging to mod culture, so we'd go to like mod nights and stuff like that. Yeah. And it was like, it didn't feel like ours. We were like regurgitating something else.
Yeah.
And like growing up in Middlesbrough, like God bless these bands for coming and playing, but like it was only real like established acts who came through, like Paul Weller, the Charlatans, things like that. That like Super Furry Animals, all amazing gigs, all amazing bands and stuff. But it's like they felt otherworldly. Do you know what I mean? Like they were like famous. They were people you'd see in magazines and stuff. So then all of a sudden, when you like move to a bigger city, and these bands are coming through where the kids are like the same age as you, and things like that, and they do it, and like they're in touching distance. Do you know what I mean? And like you can have a beer with them afterwards and things like that, and it just feels a bit more tangible. So it's like, like I say, it just felt like anything and everything was possible at that time. And that's so like you asked, was it a unique time? I think 100%. And the network of clubs as well, the club nights, because for every place, every city, every little small town, like banging out its little bands or whatever, every town and every city had their own club night. You had these amazing promoters, and so it was a network of promoters, a network of bands, and it was just, it was great.
Like with that in mind, you're almost kind of like quite glad you got out when you did, because you mentioned the in-betweeners and stuff. Do you feel like you're quite happy with how things turned out, or do you have anything you change?
I don't think there's nothing major. I mean, like, I was sad for a couple of years that we didn't get to play like a final gig. So like I say, like going back and kind of doing those last gigs, that kind of got rid of that regret, which was nice. I definitely didn't want that hanging over me forever, because I did feel like there was kind of this element of unfinished business. But I mean, we never. So we made a lot of demos and stuff, and did some recordings for a second album that we never released. And it would have been nice to put that out, but we've been, funnily enough, we've been talking about kind of making that available online.
Okay, cool.
So
that'd be good.
So I think it's just nice to, I mean, because obviously the world is in such a strange, bizarre place at the moment. I think as well, like I say, like drawing parallels with 9/11 again. I mean, who knows what creativity could come out of this? Because
I know what you mean.
If you look online, people are kind of, using the time that they've kind of got at the moment to create some amazing things. So, this could be, you know, the ripple effects of this could be a whole new scene of creativity, and, you know.
Definitely. I think there's something about it being like a bit of a leveler where everyone's back in the same boat and you kind of connect in a different way, don't you? Have a different
big
view.
Time. Yeah. People are definitely reassessing what's important, for sure.
Yeah. So contrasting like that time with now, how do you think you guys would get on if you're starting a band today? Do you see, obviously the internet, you know, it started, you know, influencing music quite heavily when you guys were around in terms of MySpace and everything. But how do you think you fare today? Is there any big changes that you'd see would be quite hard?
Do you know what? I've absolutely no idea. I've honestly, like, I've no idea whatsoever. Like, to be starting now, like, because I mean, I could only speak from my experience. Like I was saying, like, the network of clubs and promoters that was around when we were starting was like invaluable. You know, it meant you could go and like play Q Bar in Stockton, and then, like, you know, just go and play a night in Hull at the Welly. You know, like there'd be something happening, and there was like an audience for it. Like, I put together a tour for our first ever tour that we did with like a young person's rail card. You could get to London from Leeds for like 12 quid return, something like that. It was ridiculous. So I put together a tour. We did it all on trains. We carried our like bass amp, guitar amp, PA, keyboard, guitars, everything with us. And like, I think I managed to like get paid like 40, 50 quid a gig or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think we ended up like breaking even, and like we played like 10 or 15 gigs. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that just wouldn't happen now. Like,
true.
Well, one, train fares is more expensive, just logistically. And two, like, more importantly, the venues don't exist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like, and also like, I remember on that tour, like, we had a gig in Bath or Bristol, and then the next gig was in Cardiff, but it was in like 4 days after. And the promoter drove, picked us up, took us to his house, and let us live at his house for like 4 days in Cardiff. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just can't, like, I feel like kids these days, I don't know. I don't know. Would a kid drive that far, pick up 3 complete strangers, let them live at their house? I don't know. I feel like kids are more sensible now. I don't know.
Yeah, someone was saying that to me, that kids now are not that interested in going out and getting wrecked as soon as they can, kind of thing.
Yeah, but
I don't know.
See, I'm on board with that, because again, back to that idea of it being a unique time. I think it was a unique time in culture where getting completely off your face was so celebrated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it was like, I mean, God, like, you know, kids were doing smack because Pete Doherty was.
I know, yeah. I do think that encouraged a lot of debauchery.
Definitely, yeah. But so, I mean, I'd rather there was sensible kids now, like having a oat milk latte rather than doing heroin. But it's a shame there's no venues. I don't think the two have to be mutually exclusive. You know, it is a shame, like, because so I used to work in a school, and like all the kids who were kind of like the cooler kids, they weren't really into music that much. They were, but it wasn't like as life or death. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were more into like TV shows, which I found was really strange. And I don't know if that's just unique to the school I was working in, or you know, that's a cultural thing. But it was just like, I'd just do my best. I was like that, you know, every school's got that one teacher who's trying to get the kids to listen to some music. I was that guy. That was me.
Like, I can't work out if I'm getting older or there just doesn't seem to be as many good bands now. But I don't know what your view is on that, and whether it's because, I mean, obviously, like, we don't know, like you said, but whether they have the opportunities that bands like you did. But I guess, like you say, with the venues and that kind of thing, things have just changed, haven't they?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's, you know, since time began, every generation's
thinks theirs is the best.
Yeah, and you know, rubbished the next generation's music or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, if we are focusing on like guitar based or indie bands, however you want to categorize it, there's not that much exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Because if there was, chances are we'd know about it. That's the thing. That's the thing.
Definitely.
I mean, some people will be listening to this now and going, Dan, you're a moron. You don't know what you're talking about. What about like Working Men's Club? What about, like, and list off a whole host of bands. Yeah. And if we just boil it down to compare and contrast between then and now, it's just definitely not the same.
Yeah.
That's just the fact of it. Like, it was a lot easier back then to start a band and have places to play. If you just look at it logistically, there's not enough places to play now. So that's it. And like, one of the biggest things that kind of pisses me off the most is just how kind of, as the kind of the scene that we're talking about like came to an end, it became like very apparent that the opportunity for like working class kids to get into music like was just gone.
Really?
It was like when I moved to London, kind of, so like around 2007, like every band who were getting bigger or getting signed or you'd go and see, they were all kind of, very comfortable middle class kids who had that safety net.
I know what you mean, definitely.
So
who could afford to piss it up the wall, basically.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like, I'm not like, if you've got the means to, go to a nice school and your mum and dad can support you while you, express yourself, that's great. But it shouldn't mean that working class kids aren't afforded the same luxury.
No, definitely, yeah. We'll move on to what you do now. Like, did you carry on? You said you started your own band and stuff. Like, did you carry on making music, and how did that transition into doing artwork, or is artwork something you've always done?
So artwork's something I always did. So like, I mean, like I said, before I started the band, I was in art college. I went to university to do art. Like, I was doing a graphic art course, graphic art and design. So it's kind of like the love child of like a graphic design course, but with a fine art course as well.
Okay.
So yeah, and it was great. Like, a lot of our lecturers were like, they'd been in bands, or they were DJs or whatever. And like, the people I met on that course are like still some of my best friends. And like one of the guys I met, Nick Scott, he's the guy who does like all the artwork for the Cribs.
Right, cool.
And he was like really involved with Blackwire early on. Like, he did, we had like visuals for our first gig, and he put together like visuals and stuff. So yeah, I mean, that the visual side of things is just always kind of underpinned like all my creative process, really, no matter what it is. So it's like I did, for example, like I did the artwork for the Blackwire singles, like design the merch and things like that.
Yeah.
And then after Blackwire broke up, like that was always something I was doing. And then like I say, both me and Si went and did our own bands for a while.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. How did that turn out? Was it just, did you play gigs with the new bands?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. Like, I was so like when Blackwire ended, it was so bizarre because it was so much like wrapped up in my identity, like who I was. It was like to end that, it was really disorientating. Plus, moving to like a new city and everything like that, it was very, very bizarre. It was crazy. And the way I dealt with that was by going out every night for 3 months. That was.
It's almost like, I suppose comparison would be when a footballer retires. Like, you hear they struggle to get their head around it. Is it kind of similar to that?
I like that. Yeah. I definitely had a bit of a Gaza vibe going on, for sure, definitely. But the thing is, I mean, at that time, I was going out to see a lot of bands and stuff. Like Black Lips were playing around. I was obsessed with Mika Miko.
Right.
And like kind of loads of like LA bands who were playing like The Smell and stuff like that.
Okay.
That was like where my head was at. So I just really wanted to start a band that kind of took that. I guess it was, that move. Like, if you say Blackwire was kind of influenced by a New York sound, I guess.
Yeah.
after that, I kind of switched to LA and was kind of very inspired by a lot of like LA bands and things like that.
Okay.
And like I just wanted to, so I just wanted to make stuff that was kind of, well, the plan was to make stuff that sounded a bit sort of heavier and a bit more, I don't know, like I guess like the poppier elements of Sonic Youth and things like that. And a lot of like, I wanted to sound like the Liars a lot as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Was this like 2008, was it?
Yeah, it's like 2008, whatever, something like that. And it was good. Like we ended up, we put out a couple of singles and stuff, but like, you know, there wasn't like, I'm not just saying this, like, I mean, we could have just been shit and no one wanted to see us, but it's like the scene had definitely moved on.
That's what I was going to ask you, like, how was it different?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it needed to happen. Like I say, like there was all that, like, you know, everything had become mainstream and boring. And then I think like around that time, like Klaxons came out, just wiped the floor with everyone. And it was just like, we don't care about heroin and trilby hats. Like, make some MDMA and put on a American Apparel hoodie. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, so it's like all these venues that were kind of the India side of things, we just started, like, we're playing like more electronic and dancier stuff. And the kids just definitely didn't want to listen to, you know, more kind of guitar-based stuff, which is cool.
Almost, from what I remember, it almost became like uncool, like overnight kind of thing, like very quickly.
Good.
Yeah,
you know I mean? Like, thank God, man, because otherwise we'd all still be dancing to the Stone Roses and we'd all still be wearing flares. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I've got a real hatred for Stone Roses and flares, apparently. But I just want to go on record and say that I do actually like Stone Roses. People kind of have this like tinge of sadness or nostalgia when things end, and it's just like, well, no, like things have to end. Like, you know, things aren't going to be relevant forever, you know.
True, yeah. Did you find it harder in terms of, like, say you released a couple of singles, like how did that work? Was that off your own kind of label again, or?
How did it? Do you know what? I can't even remember.
Yeah.
We released our first single through Pure Groove Records,
right?
And that was through the internet. We had some demos on MySpace, and Pure Groove got in touch. And do you know the guy Daniel Avery?
Might ring a bell, yeah.
Yeah, he's a musician. He's really, really good. But he was like a kid at the time, and he was working for Pure Groove, and he was the one who like got in touch with us. And he makes like amazing like electronic music now, and he's like a DJ. Like he's an incredible guy. And weirdly, he was like just like, obviously when he was a kid, he was quite into indie and got in touch with us and like put out a record.
Oh, cool!
Which is amazing. And then we put out a record through a French record label as well, because obviously you know, like when you've got, you know, the benefit of the internet, you know, it's not limited by your limited by geography. So we put out a couple of singles and we released an EP out in Japan and things like that. But it was like, again, that was just like, it was almost like it was like a hangover of Blackwire, really. It was just like I needed to kind of put myself back together as a person. And the only way I could do that, the only way I knew, was to do it through being in a band. And I'm aware that sounds like a bit pretentious or arsey.
No, it makes sense.
That's how it was, man.
So obviously, like, you moved on to do more artwork. Like, talk a bit about that. Obviously, I've seen your stuff with Life and followed that on Instagram and stuff. It seems all very good. How does all that work? Like, does it range quite a lot? What kind of projects you get?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like with my artwork, I've always been quite sort of open to like different styles anyway. Like, I mean, I'm equally in love with the kind of like collage work or traditional like graphic design work as I am with like drawing or doodling or whatever you want to call it, you know. But like I said, it's like my kind of, it's weird, like my route into music was through artwork, you know, like, because like I say, like growing up as a kid, like, you know, I didn't have a musical bone in my body. Like and I never thought I was going to be in a band. So it's like my kind of way into music was kind of through like, I thought it was going to be, initially I thought I was going to make music videos. I don't know, that was what I thought initially. And then it was far too technical for me. And I just thought, no, I'll stick with trying to design record covers. But my ambition as a kid, like with that, all I wanted to do was design flyers for nightclubs. That was it, man. I thought that was like the coolest job in the world.
Yeah.
And, you know, and obviously when you're a 15-year-old in Borough going to see your careers advisor and tell them you want to design record covers, it's just like, yeah. You sure you don't want to go and work in the factory? So, it's fun, man. But that's what I say, like going to art college was like the absolute dream. It just, that was like the catalyst for everything for me.
Yeah. I can see why you kind of compare it to the factory in New York. That's kind of how, like, the art and music very closely linked in that way, weren't they, as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the kind of the record covers that kind of got me into wanting to like design and create artwork for music was like the Raymond Pettibon stuff for Sonic Youth, like like it's just, you know, I mean, that's just iconic. Beastie Boys album covers, Check Your Head, I just think is one of the most like iconic albums ever. And then the Primal Scream albums, like obviously Screamadelica and Exterminator, like the artwork for them was just mind blowing. And I was just like, that's what I want to be doing, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you're enjoying life on the sea, designing album covers then? Doesn't sound too bad.
It's good, man. Yeah. I mean, obviously the world is
it's mad at the minute,
mental state. But yeah, I mean, like we're saying, like, you know, it has given the whole world's kind of in the same boat at the minute. You know, everyone's living with that kind of low and high level anxiety, depending on what time of day it is. And it's kind of like, I just hope we're in a place now where it's kind of everybody takes stock about what is important and try and move on in a positive way, you know.
To finish, like I said, it'd be quite good to finish on like a funny or interesting story. Obviously, the one I put was if you've got a Liam Gallagher story, but it doesn't have to be Liam Gallagher, obviously, just maybe someone.
I mean, obviously, when you were talking to Tom, he's a lot more A-list than me. he's got his Liam Gallagher tales, but no, I've never met Liam. I've met Noel Gallagher.
Okay.
So yeah, like me and Tom went to Glastonbury in I don't know what year it was. But we went to Glastonbury and we were like, Oasis were playing and we were backstage and like, mate, but I don't know if you've been backstage at Glastonbury, but it's exactly what you think it's going to be like. Honestly, it's mint. Like, it's class. Like we were playing football with like, there's members of 80s Matchbox, Razorlight, Block Party, right, just playing football, right?
Yeah.
And we booted the ball over, and it went over, and then it's just like, who's going to kick the ball back? And this, like, the door opened to the backstage area, and like, well, whoever's going to come in is going to kick the ball back. So everyone's like looking and waiting, and it was Dot Cotton from EastEnders. Right, she was there with some lad who she'd sent to like Thailand or something to get off heroin.
She used to do that,
Yeah. So she's there and she was wearing like leather trousers. She looked like she was in Jesus and Mary shit and just like booted the ball back to us. And like the whole backstage area just like erupts. Like, I'm just like,
that sounds amazing.
This is real life. But anyway, so it's like, that's like the context. And then later on, we're just like hanging out, having some drinks or whatever.
Yeah.
And Noel Gallagher's just there, just there, you know, just like, you know, the bloke you've idolised since you were like 12, 13. So I was like, I've got to talk to him. Me and Tom go up and talk to him, and we're just like, you know, having a good laugh. And it is going like so well.
Really?
It's like ridiculous. It's like, oh my God, it's like he thinks like we're on a par or something somehow. Like, I don't know. Like, I was like, is he just polite or does he think we're sound? Like, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe I'm best friends with Noel Gallagher. And then as we're talking, me and Tom had this thing at the time where we wanted to get photographs of like the most ridiculous celebrities getting us in a headlock. Right. Which makes no sense, but that's just where our head was at.
Yeah.
And like we tried it with Debbie Harry. We tried it like it was ridiculous. But anyway, so like I look at Tom and he could like, we had this like little telepathic moment where I was like, Tom, shall I ask Noel Gallagher to get us in a headlock? And like Tom just looked and he raised his eyebrows, like nodded his head. It was like, yeah, do it. So like a dickhead, I said, oh no, can you do us a favour, mate? He's like, yeah, what's up? What you after? And can you just get us in a headlock for a photograph? And he just stopped, right? And it was like the air had been sucked out of the room. And he looked Tom in the eye, looked me in the eye, like solemn as anything, just looked us in the eye. So he both, like, you know, he knew we were both paying attention. And he just went, fuck off, and walked off. And I was like, fair enough, mate.
Jesus
fair enough.
Christ.
But yeah. But I guess that's the moral of the story is when things are going well for me and Tom, we like to fuck it up. And that's the end of Black Wire.
That's a great finishing point, to be fair.